Escobar's ruthless path to power in the drug world. Pablo Escobar, more notoriously known as the King of Cocaine, was the founder and single-handed leader of arguably the most violent and ruthless drug cartel, not only in the 80s and 90s, but in all of history. At the peak of its reign, the deadly Medellín Cartel owned around 80% of the global market share of cocaine, amassing $500 million per week, making Escobar the wealthiest criminal ever. It's common knowledge that as soon as one steps into the matters of the cartel, they are bound to make dangerous enemies out of rivals. So, how did Pablo Escobar manage to keep up his profile as top dog for so many years? One thing was clear. Escobar was not one to risk his place, regardless of the lengths he had to go to. In his efforts to protect the position of his cartel, he hired a group of men who were widely feared for their brutality and ruthlessness. They were paid to take out of the equation any potential competitors or other threats getting in the way of Escobar's business. We will talk about what happened to the deadliest three of these men for hire during and after the fall of Pablo Escobar's drug empire and where they are present day. If topics such as this one interest you, do subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated. Like the video to show your support, and let's get started. Number 3. John Gyro, Popeye, Velasquez. Resemblance to the cartoon character halted at physical appearance alone. John Velasquez, who claimed to have taken his first life at the age of only 17, became Escobar's gruesome right-hand man in the 80s. He would keep a watchful eye over all cartel affairs. He killed in cold blood at the slightest suspicion of someone having become an informant without need for evidence. Post-arrest, Velasquez admitted to the murder of 257 people. However, he could be convicted of only one, the murder of a 90s presidential candidate, Luis Carlos Galán. He was also responsible for orchestrating the murders of 3,000 targets during Escobar's time in power, including the bombing of the commercial Avianca Flight 203. This bombing was poorly planned and organized, as the intended target, leading presidential candidate César Gaviria, was not even on the flight. However, Popeye finished what had been started, and the plane crash ended up killing all 107 people on board. John Velasquez was finally taken into custody in 1992 after Pablo Escobar went down. He spent the next 23 years in prison and was released in 2014. Even though he seemed convinced he would be assassinated soon after his release, he went on to become a famous social media personality. He managed to amass 1.2 million subscribers on his YouTube channel, where he revealed bone-chilling stories from his time in the cartel. He was part of multiple films and documentaries, and even released his book in 2017, in which he wrote about his time in prison. In 2018, Velasquez was once again arrested for extortion and refusal to follow the conditions of his parole. The high-profile, cold-blooded killer died, not in any final showdowns, but of stomach cancer while serving his sentence in February of 2020. Number 2. Don Denis Muñoz Mosquera, better known by his childhood nickname, La Kika. Mosquera invoked dread in the hearts of anyone who encountered him. He was widely known for being the most violent and merciless member of Escobar's gang. La Kika is directly responsible for the murder of 220 people, and he did not kill simply to get the job done. He would take his time, often brutally torturing his victims by skinning and castrating them while they were alive before finishing them off. He would then carve KK into their bodies in order to give credit for his work and validation from Escobar. He would kill cops at random without any confrontation, and his murderous rage was not limited to the police and government officials. He once bombed a children's daycare center without remorse, simply in order to get to his intended targets, showing his disregard for human life, even including children. If you think that's crazy, just wait for what we have in store for you about Blackie Hernandez, who we will talk about in a while. Back to La Kika. He was responsible for training the new recruits in Pablo Escobar's squad to become assassins. These recruits included thousands of teenagers who lived in poverty and were in desperate need of money. More often than not, they did not have a choice in the matter. La Quica had many run-ins with the law during the reign of Escobar, arrested on counts of theft, but never murder. He would either escape prison, which was not an uncommon occurrence in Colombia at the time, or he would bribe the police officers to let him go. Therefore, he had no inhibition when it came to confrontation with law enforcement. 2 years after Escobar's fall, in 1994, La Quica was arrested and charged with drug smuggling and counts of murder. He was charged with 10 life sentences and 45 consecutive years in prison when he was just 26 years old. Unlike Popeye, however, La Quica continually denied any involvement in the cases he was accused of. He did not confess to a single crime and accused the U.S. government of setting him up. Number 1. Nelson Blackie Hernandez. Nelson Hernandez was one of the most trusted men in Escobar's close circle. He was Escobar's personal bodyguard and was even responsible for the protection of his leader's family members. Like the other people discussed, Nelson was a merciless, cold-blooded murderer. He was also known for being a very aggressive person, with a short fuse, quick to anger, and manhandle anyone he pleased. Hernandez was fiercely loyal and helped Pablo Escobar escape the clutches of law enforcement many times, often killing judges who were working on his cases. He also committed arson to protect his leader, burning rooms full of evidence so that it could not be presented in court. The turning point in Hernandez's life was in 1993. He was tasked with planting 220 pounds of C4, a blast that ended up killing 20 people, including children, and injuring 70. Seeing the aftermath of his actions, he felt intense remorse, asked God for forgiveness, and vowed never to repeat his mistakes. After the bombing, his relationship with Escobar became tense, and he felt that the notorious drug lord was becoming unhinged. The same year, Hernandez was arrested, and he cut a plea deal with agents Javier Peña and Steve Murphy in order to avoid a hanging sentence. He informed on the whereabouts of his associates that were part of Escobar's team, which led to intense consequences for most of them. After this, Nelson Hernandez was never seen or heard from again. There are two possibilities. Either his former associates murdered him to get revenge for his betrayal, or more likely, he is part of the Witness Protection Program and has been given a new identity. Some speculate that the people he turned on are still looking for him. Even though they ended up with very different outcomes in the long run, all three of the men discussed went the extra mile and more to gain the favor of their charismatic cartel leader, whether out of fear or loyalty. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Who do you think was the most brutal in his crimes? Like the video if you enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos.